So no problem. Okay. I will introduce the chair, and the chair will, of course, introduce the keynote. Today we have, I think, a very interesting chair for the keynote, because in Denmark we don't do a lot about creativity, not yet at least, and certainly not about creative writing. But one of those that really knows something about this topic is Jo, who is going to be presenting, Eunice Alencar. And Jo is the former head of the National Authors Association, and we also used to work together at the School for Gifted Children. So please welcome her, and thank you.
Thank you, Tina. I'm delighted and honored to present to you Dr. Eunice Alencar. From the very beginning of her academic career, Eunice Alencar has focused on creativity, and especially on how creativity can be fostered in the classroom and among the gifted. As a professor of psychology, she's been a pioneer within the field in Brazil, where she, among other things, has developed a line of research on creativity in educational and organizational contexts at the University of Brasilia. She's also the author of numerous books that have endeared her to a large number of readers. A few days ago, I had the chance to participate in a pre-conference workshop that Eunice Alencar gave together with Denise Flight on how to foster the students' creativity in the classroom. It soon became evident that Eunice has a keen understanding of the social implications of creativity. To enhance creativity, it is not enough to bolster the creativity of each person individually. You also need to create an environment that is receptive to it. Hindrances to creativity can be social as well as personal, and that's where teachers can make a real difference. I look forward to hearing more about creativity in the school session, and let's welcome Eunice Alencar.
May I start? Good morning. Okay. Well, I am extremely honored to be here in this conference. And I'd like to thank the Executive Committee for the invitation, for the opportunity to focus in this lecture a topic that I started studying more than 40 years ago when I was a graduate student at Purdue University, and I had classes with Donald Treffinger and John Feldhusen, who were well known for their leadership in the field of creativity and giftedness. Well, I'd like to thank all of you who are here. Thank you very much. I'm honored with your presence. Well, my intention in this presentation is to focus on 4 topics. I will start highlighting briefly the importance of fostering creativity in education. After that, I'm going to address some challenges to the nurturance of creativity in the school setting, and some strategies, some pathways to the blooming of creativity in the school. And to finalize, I'm going to address some strategies of creativity assessment, sharing with you some instruments that I and my colleagues at the University of Brasilia in our research group on creativity and giftedness developed. But as a starting point, I'd like to remember the words of a Chinese philosopher, Quan Tzu, that in the 3rd century before Christ stated, if we plan for a year, we have to plant cereals. If we plan for a decade, we have to plant trees. If we plan for a life, we have to instruct and to educate men. I like this. We have to educate children. And what should be the aims of education in this century? Which skills and competencies should be fostered in the educational setting? Nowadays, besides character strengths and some virtues, such as honesty, respect, and solidarity. In my opinion, there is too much discussion about skills, competencies, but it's of foremost importance to work, to do a good work, developing and practice and giving the real importance to these virtues, especially in some countries, especially among gifted children. Many of them will be leaders, so this is of foremost importance. But which skills and competencies should be fostered? This question has been discussed by educators, by governments in many countries, in all of the world. For example, in a recent book, Traffinger, the book is Education for Creativity in Education, Education for Creativity and Innovation. Traffinger, Schoonover, and Selby presented several reports about this issue. And in one of them, which was prepared by a team of government leaders, community leaders, and business leaders, they included several survival skills that need for instruction. They were considered very important nowadays. And they are creativity and innovation, critical thinking and problem solving. We know that one complements the other, and communication and collaboration. Also, I went to Confraternity a few years ago, and Renzulli, in his address and also in a paper, in an article that he shared with us, written with Sally Rees, he called attention also to several skills that need to be practiced, that need to be developed in the schools. These are just some of them. Monitor one's understanding and the need for additional information, formulate meaningful questions, generate reasonable arguments, explanation, hypotheses, and ideas using an appropriate vocabulary and concepts. Extend one thinking beyond the information given. I'm not going to read all because you are going to read much faster than me. Work effectively with others and communicate effectively in different genres and formats. A great challenge for many educators in many countries, in my opinion. Well, why is it important to foster creativity in the education setting? We could remember that one of the reasons is the need to prepare a student to live in a moment of history which is characterized by a great degree of instability and complexity and astonishing progress in many areas, as for example in technology, which requires that we are open, that we learn all the time. And also you know that there's an increasing pace of change with many challenges and unpredictable problems that require creative solutions. This is probably the reason why Csikszentmihalyi in the preface of a book on creativity in higher education stated, in the Renaissance, creativity might have been a luxury for the few. But by now, it's a necessity for all. This discourse is present in many, many scholars nowadays. But there is another reason for the importance of creativity. It's the association between creativity and mental health. We know that the creative expression is a positive subjective experience that contributes to emotional welfare. During the workshops, everybody they had many challenges in our workshops, right, Jo? And everybody they were playing. When they had an idea, they smiled. It was I was observing the face of the participants. It was great. Well, but I have also to remember that to suppress the development of the creative potential restricts the possibilities of a complete realization and expression of multiple talents. Well, in spite of the increasing awareness of the importance of creativity, there are many and many challenges. And I'm going to share with you some of these challenges. One of them is the numerous misconceptions about creativity, which are common among people in general, among teachers and students. For example, the idea that creativity is a rare phenomenon segregated in specialized domains such as arts and inventions. In general, people associate creativity with great productions in arts and in science. And we know the big C creativity, yeah? But we know that creativity is also present in everyday life. I like very much the analogy that Vygotsky presented this idea. He compared creativity with electricity. And he reminded us that the electricity is present during a thunderstorm and dazzling lightning, but it's also present in a lamp. So also creativity. Creativity is present in great works, but is also present in everyday life. Another misconception is the view of creativity as a natural talent present only in a few individuals, or the association of creativity with the eureka, the inspirational and the inspiration moment, which occurs without an explainable reason. And we know the important role of dedication, preparation, conscious efforts, and extensive knowledge in a specific area for the people, for the person to give as prerequisites for a creative production of a higher level. And also the idea that creativity is dependent only on personal factors. And we all know the important role of several variables of the social context. We have many studies, and here is an illustration of one of these misconceptions. We had in this study, 64 engineering students participated and were interviewed about facilitating and inhibiting factors to creativity, to personal creativity. And one student said during the interview, "I don't think of myself as a creative person. I don't have many solutions for a problem, for example. But I have many friends who come up with many alternatives. They are creative people. I think they are already like this, and were always like this. For me, it's a gift, and I wasn't born with it." So we observe that this idea is very common nowadays. is still very common nowadays. Another challenge is traditional pedagogical practices and values that we observe many places. For example, an exaggerated emphasis on the correct response. The students learn since very early that they cannot make mistakes, reinforcing the fear of making errors and fear of failure. Well, it's embarrassing not to have the response. I like this cartoon. We human beings have some strategies to escape some situations. The student said, "May I go out, teacher?" And the teacher said, "Yes, you can." And Nancy was on his chair. The teacher asked, "Nancy, weren't you going out?" She answered, "Well, only when we get to the chapter that I didn't study." And a strategy not to feel embarrassed. Well, in several studies and also in workshops, we ask the participants to complete the following sentence. "I would be more creative if," and a common response is, "I were not afraid of making mistakes." This, in several of our studies, we observe that this is a frequent response, and others, such as, "I were less insecure and less afraid. I did not fear what other people think about me. I did not consider my ideas inferior to those of other people." Well, another challenge is the emphasis on the students' obedience, passivity, and conformity. Instead of reinforcing personality characteristics, which are fundamental to a better development and expression of students' potentialities. I like Einstein's word in a book that was reprinted in 1981, when he said, "That's just a miracle that the modern teaching methods did not destroy completely the sacred curiosity which mobilizes investigation." You know that curiosity is in the fundamental of our work as scientists. Curiosity, this is important, which everybody is curious. The human being is curious. The mammifers are curious. There are studies showing that even the birds that are curious, they face dangerous situations to know other territories, for example. A big challenge in many countries, I would say my country, is the extensive content of the adopted curriculum. Too much information students need to learn and memorize to be successful in the evaluation tests. This happens. And this explains, maybe helps to explain why there is a scarcity of opportunities for students to explore and express their creative potential. Here in the same study, we have, I have here some answers of some reflections, some of engineering students, which illustrates this challenge. In the classroom, the content is transmitted, and we are obliged to be seated and see only that explanation. You have no opportunity to do differently. There is no motivation. The teacher doesn't ask, "And you, student, do you have a better idea about this?" Teaching is unidirectional. It's only from teacher to us. The teacher may even be offended if you express an opinion to him. Here in college, what's lacking in relation to creativity is the incentive to create, to have new ideas. Well, we will also observe an exaggerated emphasis on the logical thinking, and lack of consideration of fantasy and imagination, as important aspects to be taken into account. There are several studies calling attention to the role of imagination in the work of scientists, for example. I like very much a poster which was distributed by UNICEF in many countries, because there were different rights. One of them was the right to fantasize. And it's common in some countries, children, to start working very early. It's also common I'm going to, an example of my country, in private schools, too much homework. Children have no place, no time to play, because so many exercise, so much homework. This happened with my children. This continues happening with my grandchildren. Too much homework, too much things to do, in my opinion. Also, we observe that there is low expectations about the students' creative potential on the part of the many teachers, who call attention much more to the students' ignorance and capacity than to the competencies. I have 4 children. When I was asked to go to school, I was just this, oh my God, what happened? I have 4 boys. In general, I have never been called to say, well, your Alexander is doing very well in school, for example, but many times, oh, Ricardo, he needs, oh my goodness, Ricardo, oh my goodness. I have never been called to say, yo, Leonardo is doing very well, only, this happened to me many. Well, here are some cartoons who show something like that. Chico, do you know who are the 3 most used words by students? I don't know. Well done, you got it. I talked to my teacher about my vocational test, and she told me that by the results I can execute any function with incompetence. Well, we know the power of words, and we know the teacher has much more power than they believe they have. Sometimes when I give workshops in self-concept, I ask people to remember things that happened in their school life that they could not forget. A good thing or a bad thing. And I have people who are old, more than 80 years old, who remember some words of his teacher or her teacher in the 1st grade. It's impressive, the memory. We also observe that there is low recognition by teachers of alternative ways to solve problems suggested by students. Pressure to conform, expressed student inflexible curriculum and unchanging classroom activities. This happens many times, traditional classes. And prejudice against the students that make questions, criticize, or disagree with teachers' ideas. I like reading biographies, and I have several of the most creative people complained that were punished for having many questions, for example. Well, an illustration, Cropley, in his book, Creativity in Education, Creativity in Teaching and Education, I think this is the name of the book, he presented some studies, and in one of these studies, engineering students were the participants, And the results indicated that students who preferred trying new solutions dropped out of engineering course 3 times more frequently than those who preferred conventional solutions, for example. We also have to say that we observe that there lack of teachers' preparation to promote creativity in the classroom. This happens in my country, and this happens also in other countries. Here we have a study. For example, this is the results of a study that we had elementary school principals, more than 100 elementary school principals who completed our checklist of obstacles that can hinder adequate conditions for creativity in the classroom. And according to 70.3% of the principals, a teacher has no familiarity with pedagogical practices that might be used to promote students' creative development. And so, according to them, lack of enthusiasm for the teaching activity, this is very serious. A high number of students in the classroom, insecurity to test new pedagogical practices, unfamiliarity with materials, books, and articles on how to implement creativity in the classroom were some other response with a high number of high percentage of principals who checked these items. So I have several studies with this checklist, with the different members of the school team. Also, I would like also to remember the difficult teachers have to break free from previous teaching practices. It's not easy to create a new habit, for example. We have a poet in Brazil, Mário Quintana, who said, "The past is the present that refuse to pass." It's difficult to break, for example. But we know that if we do what we always did, we will continue obtaining the results we always obtained. Well, Begeto, in one book, he remembered that he highlighted the importance of teachers' prior experience as a student, the influence of this prior experience in teachers' practices. And he stated the tendencies to reproduce in the classroom the pedagogical practices teachers experienced as students. And some of them had 10,000 hours of school before, or 12,000 hours. There are some studies showing how many thousand hours we still have in schools. Some of this, it's due to some of these challenges that schools for children sometimes is not a place that they enjoy, they are happy. Here I have this cartoon. I have many cartoons about this. And Nancy said, "I can't sleep, Auntie." And she answered, "Try to think about something pleasant." And Nancy imagined that she was reading the newspaper, and it was reading, "Schools are closed until the end of the month," and she sleeps happily. Vacation, when there is a free day, children are very happy. Well, some answers. My school is like, we have many years ago, so I don't have recent date on this. We asked children to complete the following sentence. My school is like. And some answers were just a disguised prison, a jail from which I can escape, a precipice, the purgatory, the most boring place in the world, too sad. A book that you are obliged to read, and if you don't like it, a garden without flowers. A paradise, oh, this is great. The home I'd like to have. For many, many children, the school is better than their own house. We have, I know this, at least in my country, this happens due to impoverished conditions and other problems. Well, and how to foster creativity in schools? Which strategies we could use to foster, to nurture creativity? Well, my intention is to share with you the model that has guided me in working with teachers, elementary school teachers especially. But before that, I'd like to say that there are many good models. For example, Renzuli's model for the development of creative people, creative productivity in young people, because he calls attention to some aspects of the teacher, as for example, knowledge of the discipline, romance with the discipline, instructional technology, some elements of the learner. You know that we influence the learner, but we are also influenced by them. And some aspects of the curriculum, for example, the content and methodology of the discipline. I like this model very, very much. We have studies giving results a little bit different, but I'm not going to talk to him. I'd like also to share with you Dr. Klaus Urban, who was a former president of the World Council. He also has this model that's very interesting, very important to be known by teachers with many important information. But in my model includes 5 dimensions, I would say. In my opinion, if we want to foster our creative abilities, if we want to develop the students' creative ability, if we want to use better our creative potential, we should, for example, reinforce some personality traits. Some of them are associated with motivation. As, for example, just a few examples: curiosity, self-confidence, persistence, flexibility, courage. There are many, many others, but I chose this just to share. And I like very much the words of Erich Fromm. Erich Fromm, who was a psychologist, a psychoanalyst, a philosopher, a sociologist, who wrote many, many books. When I was at the university, his book, The Art of Loving, was a bestseller in my country. We were young people read The Art of Loving, and he said in one of his books, he wrote in one of his books, without courage and faith, creativity does not exist. Because we know that there are many weapons that kill new ideas. But the most dangerous of them are the weapons that we have inside of us. And we kill. We don't say some of our ideas. We have to have courage. The Holomé, the courage to create, and faith, to rely on yourselves, to have self-confidence. Well, some suggestions that how to reinforce students' personality traits, for example. Stimulate students' curiosity with open-ended activities that encourage explorations and questions. Instill students with confidence in their competencies and capacities and the willingness to take risks. You have to have success experience for you to rely on yourself. encourage students to present and to defend their ideas. And the other dimension is the creative thinking. We know that several abilities, cognitive abilities, which are associated with creative thinking, such as fluency, originality, metaphorical thinking, analogical thinking. And so, some suggestions. In general, we know our workshop, when we work with teachers, we ask teachers to give this how they could and to try them and to come back and inform the results. Give students opportunity to express their ideas, value students' original ideas, make challenging questions which motivate students to think and to reason, teach students to revise, refine, sculpt their creative ideas. This is very important. Sylvia, remember yesterday that when we write a book, you revise and revise and revise. An article, the same. When somebody told me, when a student told me, oh, your article was very, very good. I did love it. My answer, well, you read the ninth edition. This is not my first edition. If you saw, the first edition was completely different. You have to sculpt. Teachers could help the student to reduce some emotional blocks, for example. For example, the fear of not corresponding to the expectations of people that they value, or fear of being criticized, fear of making mistakes, feelings of inferiority, insecurity. So teachers can do a lot to help students in these directions. For example, teachers may help students unravel emotional blocks like fear of making mistakes, fear of being criticized, inferiority feelings, and insecurity. I am a professor, and when a student tells me, please don't call me ahead of the room because I feel so scared, I say, oh, thank you for telling me this. I'm going to call you many times because you have to be a leader. You have to defend your ideas, so you have to go ahead of the class. I do this. And this helps. I tell you, you are not going to die because you come to the front. You are we would like to help you. Help students to deal with frustration and failure. If you want to, well, everybody needs to learn with failure. If you want to use the most possible your creative potential, sometimes you are going to have experience of failure. Motivate students to master factual knowledge as a solid basis to propose new ideas. Knowledge is important. Expertise in a specific topic is also important. Well, there are several techniques, and together is besides domain-specific knowledge that also help us to have better ideas. In the first day, Shirley Cockett, remember, for example, the bonus thinking tools, the cohort problems, several principles of CPS, brainstorming, and synaptics, for example, they help us to think better ideas, to have more ideas, because, you know, for example, quantity of ideas leads to quality of ideas. If you have many and many ideas, the probability of having a good idea is greater. That's why when I write, for example, a book, the title, it's not simple sometimes to find a title for a book. So we have to think many and many titles and to choose the best title. But we also know the climate is very important. People, we are very sensitive to climate. the human beings to the psychological climate, because we need, the human being needs recognition, the human beings need love, the human beings need to feel valued. And we know that ideas are fragile. Much important are the environments that originate them and let them grow. In my opinion, I see creativity as a delicate flower. It does not resist to a climate characterized by excess of criticism and censure. It needs to be continually nurtured. Good climate for creativity is when there is a predominance of feelings of freedom and security to innovate, to explore, and to express ideas without being afraid of evaluation. This is challenge in this climate is great. We know that if the person believes that he or she will be criticized, ridiculed, or threatened, she will not express new ideas, hampering her creativity. Some suggestions for promoting creative climate. Promoting an environment of respect and acceptance for students' ideas, trust students' abilities and competencies, support the expression of new ideas, only expose students to constructive criticism, protect students' production from destructive criticism and sneering coming from the colleagues. Well, the colleagues, bullying, sometimes I think we know that happens, and other criticisms, the colleagues also have many power. Teacher has power, but the classmates also, and because the students need to be accepted by the group, we know that. Well, strategies of creativity assessment. There are several purposes for creativity assessment. Here are just some of them. For example, to provide pre-test and post-test data for group comparisons, for research and or evaluation. In several of our studies, we use pre-test and post-test to evaluate, for example, a creativity program for teachers. And it helps, and we have control group, experimental group, everything that all of you know well. Help instructors, counselors, or individuals discover unrecognized or untapped talent resource. In my opinion, we don't know ourselves. We learn about the world, we learn about what we have inside our body, but many of us don't have the opportunity to know ourselves, to know our talents, to know our strong points. Help to remove creativity from the realm of mystery and superstition. Well, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of instruments that have been developed, that were developed in these last 65 years since Guilford's first tests on creative thinking, for example, and the 60s Torrance test, the first edition of the Torrance test, and the scales and inventories. Every day we have more inventories, checklists. Observation also is very important as a strategy for creative assessment, and of course, portfolios. Well, I decide instead of, I'm very proud, we are very proud of this book, Theory and Practice of Creativity Measurement, because it's our only book in English. It's very difficult for us from some countries to publish book in English because they don't believe, the editors, they don't believe that the books will sell because we are not known. So it's very, very difficult. So unfortunately. So, but that's the reason why I publish in our language, because there it's, and I'm lucky. Well, my first book was wrote 40 years ago, has 70 editions. Well, I cannot talk. My time is well, so just illustration of some of our instruments. One of the instruments is the Classroom Climate for Creativity Scale. Professor Denise Flight is here, and is the author, the first author of this instrument. It was designed to be completed by elementary school students. It has 22 items and answering a 5-point scale. And this instrument, in the validation, the first validation study, it resulted in 5 factors. One factor is teacher support to the student expression of ideas, just one item. The teacher pays attention to my ideas. Another, students' self-perception of creativity, one item. I have many ideas, or I think I'm creative. Students' interest in learning. I like the content taught. Students' autonomy. I can make choice about what I want to do. A teacher's incentive to students' ideas production. The teacher asks me to think of new ideas. These are some of the items. Here's the format of the instrument, because it's for young children, it's not for adults, for example. Another instrument that we developed was the inventory of teaching practices for creativity in higher education, with 37 items, which are answered in a 5-point scale, and it measures 4 factors. This instrument has been used also in studies conducted in Portugal, because we have the same language. And one factor is incentive to new ideas, encourages students to examine different aspects of a problem. Climate for expression of ideas creates an environment, the teacher creates an environment of respect and acceptance of students' ideas. Evaluation and teaching methodology. The teacher always uses the same teaching method. The teacher provides the students little choice about the assignments to be developed, invented for scoring. Interest for students' learning, gives constructive feedback to students, is available to meet students outside the classroom. And this instrument was constructed in 3 versions. One, to be completed by the teacher. This instrument was validated with higher education teachers and students. As a teacher of the subject, for example, Introduction to Psychology, it's my typical behavior in the classroom to cultivate in students' interest in new discoveries and new knowledge, make challenging questions that motivate students to think and to reason. Challenging questions, this is very good. It's not easy, I tell you, to have challenging questions sometimes. Stimulate students' initiative, value students' original ideas. Well, I'm sorry. But there is also a version to be answered by the teacher as if the teacher was the student. According to my students in the subject, it's my typical behavior in the classroom. And we published an article with this instrument a few years ago in Gifted and Talent Education. I think. Well, I have to finish. My time is I'm the last instrument. Obstacles to personal creativity inventory. Well, I had more thousands and thousands of answers to the. I would be more creative if in more than one country. The first study, the students and the teachers and They only completed. And we have so many answers that we constructed an instrument on the base using those answers. The obstacles to personal creativity inventory. It has 66 items, and the validation studies indicated resulted in the following factors: inhibition, shyness. I would be more creative if I were less shy to express my ideas. I were not afraid to express what I think. Another factor, lack of time of opportunity. I would be more creative if I had more opportunities to put in practice my ideas. Social repression. I would be more creative if I had not received a rigid education. Lack of motivation. I'd be more creative if I were more enthusiastic. We have a study with this instrument with data collected in Brazil and Mexico. It was published in the Journal of Creative Behavior a few years ago, I think. Well, this is my last slide. I'd like to share with you our duty as teachers, as educators. All of us are educators. We don't need to be in a school, in a classroom to be an educator. As teachers, it is our duty to be a lighthouse in our students' lives, helping them to uncover their creative potential, guiding them to develop most fully their potential in favor of themselves and of foremost importance in society. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Eunice. We'd like to take questions in the written form, so
because I understand what I read very well, but sometimes I have difficulties because I don't listen too much in English. That's why I asked this favor to write just for me to understand exactly, not misunderstanding what you'd like in your questions. Languages and obstacles, unfortunately. I wish everybody would speak the same language. Oh, it would be great. Oh, it would be so nice. The books, we could read the books written in China. Oh, my goodness, in German, in Greece. Oh, I wish I could read all the languages. Oh.
More questions? I saw a hand up here somewhere. Nope. Okay.
I learned only one word in the language here, tak, tak. So all place I go, I say tak, tak, tak. This is the only word that I learned. I tried, but they are so different. Oh, this is a good question. What do you think about the importance of creativity in bodily, kinesthetic, musical, and artistic talent kids? Well, it's of foremost importance. It's very, very important. In my opinion, education is too focused only in cognitive abilities. Sometimes I compare education, at least in my country, with young people who is doing exercise, and the person exercise only, for example, the muscle and the rest of the body doesn't develop. For example, music, dance, artist talent should have a greater space in education, in my opinion. It would be very good if this happens. well, this is a very, I would like also, this maybe you could help me doing what's written here. The question is, have you done any studies relating to the predictive validity of your instruments? We have some studies about concurrent validity, but not with predictive validity. If somebody here would like to participate in a team with us and to use some of these, for example, the obstacles to personal creativity, and a few years more later to use the same instrument, it would be great. I would be very happy, glad, delighted if this happens.
Well, a call for collaboration. And a final question here. Ooh, that's 2 questions actually.
I love Sylvia. Sylvia has all conference that I go, I see how Sylvia is wonderful. My goodness. My goodness. Well, please, if I make some mistakes, forgive me, because sometimes when I think in young children evaluating teachers' teaching skills, the children evaluate the teachers. Oh, to evaluate teachers? Okay.
I saw 3rd and 4th graders were asked to evaluate whether they got opportunities to ask enough questions and have choices, and they're very young children, and teachers are trying to teach them a lot of basic skills. And are they assumed to be doing creative work all the time? And I think that's pretty hard on teachers.
Yes.
And the other part that I feel worried about is, I think most children are very happy in school. And your picture of them being more bored, some children are bored in school, but when I look at elementary classrooms, they seem happy, they're working. So I love creativity, but I feel worried that teachers need encouragement too. And I don't want to paint I love the way you use teacher self-evaluations to ask them, but I don't want teachers to feel they're at the mercy of children who want it their way.
Okay, thank you. Very important.
Yes.
Well, the instrument that we presented in 3 formats, it's only for higher education, okay? It is not to be used in elementary school. It is for higher education. It was validated with teachers, professors, and students, more than 1,000 undergraduate students completed the instruments. Well, in my opinion, in many classes, teachers are too much pressed to do well, too much homework to do, too much things to learn, too much to succeed in life. In some parts, this is middle classes. I'm saying middle classes, private schools, teachers, children. I have grandchildren, 3 years old and homework. My grandchildren, so many books that they go to school because, so many books to read, too much content. I would prefer, in my opinion, too much. I don't agree that little children evaluate teachers, in my opinion. This is not fair.
Thank you very much, Eunice. And we have a couple of presents for you here.
Oh, this is great. I love birthday. Thank you. I'm happy.
And from the conference.
Oh, just my goodness. Okay. Oh, thanks a lot. The people here, everybody is so kind. I was in Copenhagen. I was enchanted. Everybody. I have many questions because my spatial intelligence is not very good. When I asked, please help me, everybody like to help me to find a place. It was great. Thanks a lot. You are great.
Okay.
Thank you for your work.